Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel, so if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land with ILTV, have no worries. It's time for our new show this week in Israel, where we'll give you the scoop on everything you need to know about the last 7 days right from Tel Aviv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, here to keep you informed. Israeli jets are believed to have struck a Syrian weapons depot near the Syria-Lebanon border. Arabic media has reported massive explosions in the region, claiming they're from 4 Israeli airstrikes and that eyewitnesses have actually seen Israeli jets in the sky. Syria has immediately retaliated for the attack, launching anti-aircraft ballistics. At this time, no Israeli jets have been reported as hit, with the Syrian depot believed to be massively damaged beyond repair. The Israeli Prime Minister has issued a harsh warning following that counterattack, saying, "If anyone attempts to harm us, we will harm them back." This incident comes just a few weeks after Syria launched rockets at Israeli planes returning from a recon mission in Lebanon, actions that caused Israel to return fire and destroy the anti-aircraft batteries. Clearly, tensions are continuing to ramp up between Israel and Syria, especially now that both Iran and Hezbollah are in the mix. Horrific news from New York City. A devastating terror attack has just claimed at least 8 lives, including 1 Jewish man, and left nearly a dozen others injured. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has offered Israel's deepest condolences for the attack, and police now have the suspect in custody.
It's a very painful day in our city. Horrible tragedy on the west side. Let me be clear that based on the information we have at this moment, this was an act of terror, and a particularly cowardly act of terror aimed at innocent civilians, aimed at people going about their lives who had no idea of what was about to hit them. We, at this moment, based on the information we have, we know of 8 innocent people who have lost their lives.
The suspect has been identified as an Uzbeki national living in the United States since 2010. Police have confirmed he left behind a note at the scene of the crime claiming he made the attack in the name of the Islamic State. 29-year-old Sayfulo Saipov is believed to be the driver of the truck that intentionally mowed down pedestrians on a New York City bike path and then smashed his vehicle into a children's school bus. The suspect can then be seen fleeing police while brandishing fake guns. Police neutralized him in a shootout and rushed him to the hospital, where he's expected to make a full recovery. Officials are treating this investigation as a terror attack, making it the bloodiest terrorist plot in New York City since the tragic fall of the Twin Towers on September 11th of 2001. Devastating. The IDF has just destroyed a Hamas terror tunnel stretching from under Gaza deep into Israeli territory. At least 7 Palestinians were killed, with 12 others injured, most of them members of the Islamic Jihad terror group. That includes a senior commander and 2 members of Hamas's military wing. Both Hamas and Fatah are accusing Israel of purposely trying to derail the ongoing Palestinian unity talks by taking military action against the terror tunnel. But Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has reaffirmed that Israel will not tolerate any security risks.
שלום לכם. האחריות הראשונה של כל ממשלה זה לדאוג לביטחון אזרחיה. אנחנו עושים את זה. מי מנסה לפגוע בנו, אנחנו פוגעים בו. אמרתי לכם כבר פעמים רבות שאנחנו מפתחים טכנולוגיה פורצת דרך לטפל באיום המנהרות. אנחנו מיישמים את זה. היום איתרנו מנהרה וגם השמדנו אותה, ונמשיך לעשות את זה. אנחנו רואים בחמאס אחראי לכל ניסיון לפגיעה בריבונות שיוצאת משטחו על ידי אנשים שכפופים לסמכותו, ואנחנו נמשיך להגן על גבולות ישראל.
The Prime Minister has just touted a secret breakthrough technology that led the army to discovering the tunnel, which is believed to have been dug by Hamas after the last Gaza war in 2014. The Islamic Jihad faction is now reportedly meeting to discuss a retaliation against the state of Israel for the attack. Though for now, most speculate that the act won't escalate into military action. Now, this is pretty shocking. Hamas has just released new footage of Gilad Shalit, the Israeli soldier that they held in captivity for 5 whole years.
Shalit was just 19 years old when he was captured by Palestinian militants from Hamas. His captors crossed into Israel from the Gaza Strip through an underground tunnel in June of 2006 and managed to infiltrate an IDF post. 2 Israeli soldiers were killed and another 2 were wounded in the ensuing battle, and Shalit was taken hostage. For 5 years, Israel tried its best to get Shalit released, but ultimately he was only let go in 2011 after Israel agreed to exchange 1,027 Palestinian prisoners for his freedom. The freshly released footage of Shalit shows his final moments before that final release. Hamas has revealed footage of the former Israeli hostage in the past, all of which is part of a Hamas documentary regarding the entire affair.
All right, the first real attempt at Palestinian reconciliation in recent memory has just become a shocking reality. We've learned that Hamas has now officially turned over control of all Gaza border crossings to the Palestinian Authority, making this the first time in over 10 years that the PA has had any official control in the Gaza Strip. ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with the analysis. Now, Aaron, a lot of people, even many Palestinians, were skeptical the handoff was going to happen. Now, what does it mean for Palestinian unity?
I think, at least from the perspective of the Palestinians, it looks like it's working. There are a lot of kinks to still be worked out in the security details, but with Egypt thoroughly integrated into the discussions and into the implementation as well, it's looking positive.
Now, what else is giving you vibes of success?
I'll get into the details in a little bit in my report, but one thing that stands out right off the bat is the commitment to adhering to a 2005 agreement, which actually stipulates 3 things, and I have them here. It requires Egypt, Israel, and the Palestinian Authority and the United States to work together on security, so that's pretty nice. It establishes a EU third-party police force that is present at the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza at all times, and it stipulates that the Palestinian Authority will act to prevent movements of weapons and explosives and other such ordnance going in and out of Gaza. So, essentially, one of the best-case scenarios that Israel has been hoping for should the agreement actually be carried out.
All right, well, let's check out your report.
This handoff is a critical and symbolic gesture by Hamas, demonstrating the terror group's eagerness to uphold the terms of the unity deal.
طبعا اليوم هذا يوم عظيم يسجل في تاريخ الشعب الفلسطيني انه عادت الشرعيه الفلسطينيه للمعابر، عادت الحكومه الوفاق، اصبح حكومه واحده تحت سياده الرئيس ابو مازن، ولا يسعنا في هذا المقام ان نشكر جمهوريه مصر العربيه لدورها العظيم.
But it's also the first concrete test for the Palestinians, beginning a long process in which Hamas will eventually transfer all administrative control over to the Palestinian Authority. For now, Hamas soldiers are still on guard at the border crossings, while PA President Mahmoud Abbas's government is responsible for all crossings and taxes along the Gaza-Egyptian border. As the negotiations continue, Abbas's security forces will eventually replace Hamas soldiers, though many believe Hamas will fight to keep its own police present in the mix. The Rafah border crossing between Egypt and Gaza has been mostly closed due to security concerns, but now that it's in PA hands, Abbas plans to reopen it full-time, something that hasn't happened in over 10 years of Hamas control.
The United Nations has just announced a plan to put $18 million of financial aid in the hands of the Palestinians. According to the UN, the massive grant is specifically intended to help the Palestinians pursue legal action against Israel and hold Israel accountable for its violations.
This announcement has already come under heavy fire by American and Israeli officials, slamming it as yet another shameful discriminatory move against the Jewish state. The UN's plan, which still needs gap funding as well as a vote, would transfer $18 million to the Palestinian Authority through multiple UN agencies. The money would be used to train, advise, and provide tools for Palestinian officials to take legal action against Israel on the international forum. This is the first time any UN report has pushed funding legal aid for Palestinians, fueling the White House's claims last month that the UN has long been engaged in anti-Israel bias. This is one of the biggest reasons why both the US and Israel announced they were pulling out of UNESCO just a few weeks ago. But clearly, the UN seems determined to stick to its agenda.
A major assassination attempt has just been made in the Gaza Strip. The security chief of Hamas is now recovering in the hospital after a car bomb nearly took his life. Hamas officials were quick to blame Israel for the attack, but after reviewing the incident, they now believe the Islamic State is responsible.
Many believe this failed attempt on Tawfiq Abu Naim's life exposes the tensions boiling between Palestinian factions at the moment, amidst intense negotiations for a Palestinian unity government. One of the deal points requires Hamas to lead the charge in eliminating the ISIS insurgency around the Gaza-Egypt border, an effort personally headed by Abu Naim himself. But that didn't stop Hamas officials from immediately blaming Israel for the would-be assassination.
نحن اليوم إذ نوجه أصابع الاتهام مباشرة إلى الاحتلال وأذنابه وأصابعه وأيديه الذين لا يروق لهم أن يكون الشعب الفلسطيني آمنا مطمئنا ولا أن يرسم الشعب الفلسطيني بالأمن والاستقرار لا قياداته ولا أعمدة وأركان الأمن في هذا البلد. وبالتالي إذا كان لنا ونحن نتحدث اليوم عن الغرض الأساسي والمستفيد الأول من هذه العملية هو الاحتلال وذيول الاحتلال، لكن أيضا هناك محاولة على ما يبدو التأثير على المصالحة الوطنية. نحن نعتقد أن هذا الحادث لا ينفصل عن التأثير على المصالحة الوطنية كما يريد من فعلوه، لكن نحن نطمن أبناء شعبنا أننا ماضون في المصالحة الوطنية رغم هذا الجرح.
Less than 24 hours after investigating the evidence, however, sources now agree the Islamic State is behind the incident. This attack comes mere weeks before Hamas is set to turn over full control of the Strip to the PA's Fatah party. But with many of the biggest deal points still undecided, negotiations clearly have many obstacles still to overcome.
Israel's West Bank barrier has attracted some of the world's biggest graffiti artists over the years, but a new mural painted onto the barrier is turning more than a few heads. That's because it depicts President Donald Trump sharing a tender kiss with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
As you can see, the immaculately detailed drawing leaves very little to the imagination, and it's clearly had the desired effect. Located in Bethlehem on the Palestinian side of the separation barrier, tourists from all over the world stopped to take in the so-called activist art. This mural is the latest entry from the cult graffiti artist known as Lush Sucks, who has made a name for himself by painting all kinds of different celebrities on the controversial separation wall. This Netanyahu-Trump Valentine took him several hours to paint, which he did under the cover of night. When speaking with reporters, the artist was careful to maintain the aura of his work by concealing his identity.
The message of the work, I don't think there is a message. I mean, most of the stuff I painted is on the wall. The wall's a message in itself. I don't need to write Free Palestine or something like that, something really direct and people will ignore.
The West Bank has become a central attraction for graffiti artists. Banksy has infamously painted several iconic images there over the years, and earlier this year even opened the Walled-Off Hotel, a museum/hotel in Bethlehem that's just a few feet away from the barrier wall.
All right, Israel has been under fire recently for allegedly selling weapons to Myanmar, an African country accused by the United Nations of textbook ethnic cleansing. But now French intelligence is reporting that Israel has finally discreetly and significantly halted all arms sales to Myanmar. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with a story now. Brett, any word on why Israel made this call now?
Well, word is that this decision came directly at the request of the United States. But I think it's safe to say that Israel's been getting pressure from just about the entire world over suspected arms sales to Myanmar, a country, like you said, has been accused of horrific war crimes for a decade now. Things hit a breaking point last week when Myanmar posted pictures of its new naval arsenal on Facebook, which featured technology that was clearly Israeli in origin. Now, Israel doesn't comment on weapon sales, or either alleged or otherwise, but for most, these pictures were a pretty chilling confirmation that Israel had indeed sold military gear behind the world's back.
These reports now that Israel stopped selling arms to Myanmar altogether come from French intelligence. Is this reliable intel?
Well, for now, it's just one report, but I think we'll be seeing a clear picture in the coming weeks when people really start looking into this. But if it's true and Israel has halted all arms deals to Myanmar, it could be a major first in Israeli policy, and probably a very welcome one at that, as you'll see now in the report.
French intelligence is reporting that Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has called for a freeze on all military sales licenses to Myanmar.
This comes after fierce pressure from the international community, who have accused the African country of horrific ethnic cleansing of its Muslim minority. Rumors that Israeli weapons firms had gotten a government green light to sell to Myanmar also ignited protests from within the country as well. And things hit a fever pitch last week when Myanmar's Navy posted photos on Facebook featuring its fleet outfitted with advanced Israeli weapons tech. Details of Israeli military contracts to foreign countries are by policy kept under tight wraps. An Israeli court actually ruled on arms sales to Myanmar in September, but the decision was placed under gag order, unreleased to the public. Israel has denied any direct participation in ethnic cleansing campaigns carried out by Myanmar.
Israel dominated at the Abu Dhabi Grand Slam Judo tournament this weekend, nabbing 5 medals throughout the competition. But celebrations were more than just a little dampered when the United Arab Emirates Judo Federation refused to play the Israeli national anthem during the medal ceremony. They wouldn't even allow the Israeli flag anywhere at the event. Well, ILTV's Aaron Porras is here with us, and he has more on the story. Now, Aaron, unfortunately, this is something that I feel like I've heard before, and we've even covered before. This is a pretty familiar story, right?
Unfortunately, you were right. This is a familiar story for Israeli athletes, especially Israeli judokas, but not only. I mean, Israeli sports has fought against discrimination like this in everything from, the Olympics to tennis to FIFA.
Soccer. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So, and how has Israel been fighting back?
Well, I mean, they've been fighting by sending very clear messages saying, this goes against everything that your organization supposedly stands for, especially being a sports organization, things like that. But yeah, I mean, complaints have been filed by the Israel Judo Federation, by the Israeli Ministry of Sports, and by several other associated organizations. Unfortunately, all complaints, again, have fallen on deaf ears, as you'll see in my report right now.
Last year at the Summer Olympics, an Egyptian athlete infamously and publicly refused to shake hands with his Israeli competitor, Or Sasson. Sasson faced similar discrimination at this year's tournament as well, as he stood on the podium to receive his bronze without a trace of the Israeli flag anywhere on his uniform. But one of the biggest snubs was when Tal Flicker took gold at the men's under 66 kilogram category, and the event organizers refused to play Israel's national anthem as he accepted his medal. Among the other medal winners for the Israeli team are Tohar Boutboul, who was denied a handshake from his opponent from the United Arab Emirates. Presidents of the United Arab Emirates Judo Federation have publicly apologized for the discriminatory treatment at this year's games and promised to allow the Israeli flag and anthem for next year. For many, however, this apology comes far too late to make up for the poor hospitality. The saving grace from the tournament was that at least Tal Flicker could be seen singing the Israeli anthem Hatikva as the IJF anthem played instead. All that despite the discriminatory protestations.
Today marks the 100-year anniversary of the Balfour Declaration, the British pledge to create a national homeland for the Jewish people in what was then known as British-mandated Palestine. Israelis and Palestinians have just commemorated the anniversary, but in very different ways.
Britain's Balfour Declaration of 1917, though not a legally binding agreement, laid the foundation for what would eventually become the State of Israel.
The Balfour Declaration made it possible to lay the infrastructures which were needed for the establishment of Israel.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has just flown to London to celebrate the declaration's legacy with England's top leaders. For many Israelis, Balfour is the reason they have a Jewish state today, 100 years later.
The Palestinians say that the Balfour Declaration was a tragedy. That wasn't a tragedy. What's been tragic is their refusal to accept this 100 years later. I hope they change their mind, because if they do, we can move forward finally to making peace between our two peoples.
For Palestinians, however, the declaration marked a tragic turning point in their people's history, as the moment they believed they lost their homeland. That's why Palestinians are celebrating Balfour's legacy with protests in the streets, and President Mahmoud Abbas is threatening to sue England for making the declaration a century ago.
Time Out Tel Aviv is one of Israel's biggest fashion magazines, revealing the hippest trends in Tel Aviv to readers all over the world. But this week, the editors printed a special edition and decided to temporarily rebrand it as Time Out Ramallah.
Hot off the presses, the limited run switches the usual Tel Aviv narrative and gives Palestinian journalists the ink to talk about life in Ramallah. 7 Palestinian reporters and photographers leaped at the chance to have their stories heard and for their words to be published internationally in English, Hebrew, and Arabic.
As Palestinians, we don't always share our stories, and having this kind of thing in Ramallah and like a way, an approach to share our stories and experiences to the whole world, to hear them and to ourselves, is something encouraging.
70,000 copies of Out Ramallah have already circulated in Israel, giving many Israelis their first ever real understanding of life behind the separation barrier.
Me personally, I would like to know more about the Arab world. The Arab world is very interesting. Ramallah in particular is something that is very close but still yet very far in terms of getting there, and I'm quite intrigued, and I would like to learn more about their nightlife, about their, how lives in general in Ramallah and other Palestinian cities.
While some of the articles are a bit heavier than the magazine's typical fashion tips, like a Gazan story about living with less than 6 hours of electricity a day, others may offer Israelis some common ground, like the story of the first ever Palestinian food truck operated by reformed prison inmates. The political divide makes collaborations like this a difficult and rare feat, but hopefully the experiment leads to even more.
All right, Israeli scientists have just helped crack another critical breakthrough in the war against cancer, something to smile about. Researchers from Hebrew University and MIT have developed a special protein designed to target and attack cancer cells organically in the body. This could be a giant leap forward for cancer treatment all over the world. Current invasive procedures like chemotherapy tend to be incredibly unpleasant and sometimes not very effective. But this new breakthrough maximizes the body's own immune system by flipping a protein switch that helps the body target and destroy cancer cells. Our body's natural disease-fighting cells typically can't distinguish between healthy cells and cancer cells, but Israeli scientists were able to solve this problem by isolating the part of our DNA that IDs diseases. From there, the international team developed a protein that acts as an alarm of sorts, attacking cancer cells whenever the body detects them nearby. This is an amazing, amazing discovery, one that gives hopes to thousands of patients and doctors all over the world. All right, ever wanted some personal life advice from Albert Einstein? Well, a handwritten note by the genius containing his personal formula for happiness has just been sold in a Jerusalem auction for a whopping $1.3 million. And we have the scoop on just what it says.
By 1922, Albert Einstein was already a legendary physicist, but even a genius has trouble paying the bills sometimes. Einstein was in Tokyo when he found out he just won the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics. And when he reached his hotel, he realized he didn't have enough money for the bellboy. So what did he do instead? Well, he found a hotel notepad, scribbled his personal formula for living a happy life, and told the attendant that one day this little note would be worth more than the usual tip. And now, nearly a century later, another Einstein prediction has just come true. The bellboy's nephew just put up the note for auction in Jerusalem, netting a massive $1.3 million.
Einstein is a worldwide personality. It's somebody that interests not just scientists, it interests, it's a world, basically there is no kid in the world, I guess, that doesn't know who's Albert Einstein. That's basically it. So when Albert Einstein writes a few words from a deep thought of his heart, what is the secret of happy living, this is something that interests everyone and can talk to everyone.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, so tell me what it says already. All right, I'll tell you, and I won't even make you pay $1 million for it. Here it is. Einstein's very own theory for living life. A common, humble life will bring more happiness than the pursuit of success and the constant restlessness that comes with it.
That's it for this week's Roundup. Tune in next Friday for our next episode of This Week in Israel. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from Tel Aviv.